The Senate Judiciary Committee will vote on Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett on October 22nd, just 12 days before the November election. Today, if you were watching, like I was, streaming on C-SPAN, Democrats and Republicans got into a 2-hour debate, a fascinating one that was calm, believe it or not, about the merits of this vote. Democrats claim it is being rushed to help the president in an election year. Republicans say no, this is just the process. Earlier this week, Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse used his 30 minutes of time to question Barrett. Instead, though, to shine a spotlight on the groups he says are pulling the strings. He didn't question her. He shined a spotlight instead. Conservative groups using dark money to quietly control the levers of the Supreme Court nomination process while no one is looking. Here's Whitehouse describing the activity the public does not see.
What is the scheme here? Let me start with this one. In all cases, there's big anonymous money behind various lanes of activity. One lane of activity is through the conduit of the Federalist Society. It's managed by was managed by a guy named Leonard Leo, and it's taken over the selection of judicial nominees. How do we know that to be the case? Because Trump has said so over and over again. His White House counsel said so. We have, again, anonymous funders running through something called the Judicial Crisis Network, which is run by Carrie Severino, and it's doing PR and campaign ads for Republican judicial nominees. It got single $17 million donation in the Garland Gorsuch contest. It got another single $17 million donation to support Kavanaugh. Somebody, perhaps the same person, spent $35 million to influence the makeup of the United States Supreme Court. Tell me that's good. And then over here, you have a whole array of legal groups, also funded by dark money, which have a different role. They bring cases to the court. They don't wind their way to the court, Your Honor. They get shoved to the court by these legal groups, many of which ask to lose below so they can get quickly to the court to get their business done there.
Joining me now is Daily Beast legal affairs columnist Jay Michaelson, who has written about the role of dark money and how it plays into placing conservative judges on the Supreme Court. Thanks for joining us. So I think the point that Sheldon Whitehouse was trying to make was that although she was answering these questions, saying she's made no commitment to anybody about any way that she will rule, the groups that have vetted her, the way that she got on this list that was handed to the president, part of what got him elected in 2016 in the first place, have done that vetting process already. They know how she's going to rule on any individual case. Am I reading that wrong?
No, that's absolutely right. And the vetting process lasts for decades. The Federalist Society is kind of a law school to lawyer to judicial nominee pipeline. And no one gets through that pipeline unless they have the right points of view on these key issues.
So my colleague and I, Jacob Soboroff, we did a whole swamp series, an hour-long series about dark money in politics and the way that it influences Congress. Something that we didn't really get into too much was the way it influences Supreme Court judges and also federal court judges. Jane Mayer, obviously, you know, has written a whole book about this. Talk to me about the Federalist Society and the Judicial Crisis Watch and what their goals are and who they influence.
Well, that's right. I mean, just looking at the magnitude, this is one organization, the Federalist Society, that will, upon Justice Barrett's seemingly inevitable confirmation, have placed 5 justices on the Supreme Court, including the Chief Justice. They came through the same network, through the same sort of vetting process. They were put forward by the same people. And, you know, this isn't some conspiracy theory. I mean, this is happening right in the open. They don't deny any of this happening. What's perhaps conspiratorial is that we don't know who's paying for this. We don't actually know what their ultimate aims are. We can sort of intuit them based on the sort of religious fundamentalist angle and the pro-corporate angle of these judges and justices and how they've ruled. But the impact has just been enormous. President Trump has put 56 appellate court judges on the bench. 48 of them have come through the Federalist Society.
Judicial Crisis Network. I'm sorry, I messed up that name.
Right.
Who's Leonard Leo, the man behind the Federalist Society, or at least formally behind the Federalist Society?
Nominally, formally, right. So we first at the Daily Beast reported this in 2018. There are a lot of operatives in D.C. Leonard Leo is not alone in being somebody who networks together a lot of people, but he's been remarkably successful, starting about a dozen different organizations, raising over $250 million in dark money in a 5-year period alone. So we probably should actually double that figure, although we don't know how much he's raised since 2017, which is the last tax return we have. And this is someone who has had a very particular hard right religious fundamentalist vision of how the courts should operate in our society, and has sought to implement that. He's got a number of different activities. It's interesting, you know, Senator Whitehouse, I'm very grateful for Senator Whitehouse for kind of painting this picture, and it may have looked a little crazy with all of the poster boards and magic markers and so forth, but he was only describing part of it. Leonard Leo also basically has, you know, he's invested $30 million in the George Mason University Law School, now named after Antonin Scalia. He's created shell companies to give donations to the Trump inauguration and to other sort of pro-Trump organizations. So he's really in a lot of different lanes, of which Senator Whitehouse explained 3: the Judicial Crisis Network, Federalist Society, and these activist organizations, which look like they're many different organizations bringing these cases, but all are coming from the same pot of dark money funneled through the same people.
So right after Whitehouse spoke, Senator Cruz spoke, and he tried to say that this is not just a Republican thing. This is going on with Democratic nominees as well. And this is Whitehouse calling the being a kettle, or whatever the saying is, Whitehouse being hypocritical. Is there a comparative group? Don't ask me to think of phrases on the fly on live television. I'll embarrass myself. Is there a comparison between liberal dark money groups and Republican dark money groups, conservative dark money groups?
Liberals wish that there was a comparison. There are liberal equivalents. Demand Justice, for example, is kind of equivalent to the Judicial Crisis Network, but they're tiny. I mean, they're 1/10 the size. They don't have nearly the reach. They haven't had nearly the impact. They don't have these sister organizations like the Federalist Society acting as sort of like the Human Resources Department of the Trump administration, filling all of these vacancies. So there's really no comparison. I mean, it's ironic for Ted Cruz to have mentioned that because, you know, as we're heading in, one of the things that Justice Barrett is supposed to do when she gets on the court is rule on the election. And, you know, she and Ted Cruz and Justice Kavanaugh and Chief Justice Roberts were all on Bush's campaign legal team in 2000. And these are the people who are now going to be deciding if this election is fair.
There's a Washington Post article about that. I suggest our viewers go and read it. Pot calling the kettle black. I came up with it as you were talking, Jay. Jay, thanks so much for being here. Sorry we couldn't do this in person. Jay Michaelson, we appreciate it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.